When my twin sister died, I inherited her life, her apartment, her clothes, her job, but no one prepared me for inheriting her husband too. I stood in the doorway of Olivia's sleek downtown apartment, cardboard box balanced on my hip, the key still warm in my palm. 3 weeks had passed since the accident. 3 weeks of funeral arrangements, legal documents, and hollow condolences from people who couldn't tell which twin they were actually speaking to. I was used to being mistaken for Olivia. We were identical in DNA, but opposite in everything else. She was the successful one, the polished one, the twin everyone remembered. I was just Emma, the backup copy. You can't stay here. The voice came from the kitchen. I dropped my box, keys clattering across the hardwood floor. James, Olivia's husband, stood in the archway, unshaven and hollow-eyed, clutching a mug that probably contained something stronger than coffee. Jesus, James, you scared me, I gasped, heart racing. What are you doing here? I live here, he said flatly. But I thought I trailed off. The lawyer had told me James had moved out last week, that the apartment was empty and ready for me to occupy. I'd lost my own place months ago, crashing on friends' couches while Olivia offered sympathetic texts but never a spare bedroom in her spacious home. Well, I didn't, James said, taking a swig from his mug. So you can take that box and go back to wherever you've been. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. The executor said this apartment belongs to me now. Olivia left it to me. James laughed, a harsh, unfamiliar sound. The James I knew from family holidays and occasional dinners was gentle, soft-spoken. This man was a stranger wearing my brother-in-law's face. Of course she did, he said bitterly. Olivia's final act of charity, giving her struggling sister a place to live, very on. Olivia had always been the responsible twin, the successful one who had it all together while I bounced between jobs and apartments. Even in death, she was saving me. I am sorry about Olivia, I said quietly. I miss her too. Something flickered across his face, pain, anger, something deeper. Do you? He asked. Because from where I am standing, you are the only one who benefits from her being gone. The accusation hung between us, ugly and raw. I could have shouted at him, reminded him that I'd lost my other half, that no apartment could replace my sister. Instead, I picked up my box and stepped inside, closing the door behind me. I am staying, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. We both lost her, James. We can share the space until we figure something else out. He stared at me for a long moment, and I was struck by how much he'd changed in the 3 weeks since I'd seen him at the funeral. He'd lost weight, and the circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept in days. Finally, he turned away. Fine, but stay out of our bedroom not his, and Olivia's oars, as if my sister were still alive, as if I were the intruder in their perfect life. I watched him disappear down the hallway, the door to the master bedroom closing with a decisive click. Standing alone in my sister's living room, surrounded by her designer furniture and carefully curated art, I felt like an imposter. Photos of Olivia and James lined the shelf, skiing in Aspen, sailing in Greece, always smiling, always perfect. There wasn't a single photo of me, not even from our childhood, when people could still tell us apart. I set my box down on Olivia's pristine white couch and pulled out the one thing I couldn't leave behind, a faded, creased photo of us at 16, arms around each other, identical grins beneath different hairstyles. Back when we were still sisters instead of rivals, before Olivia became the sun and I became the shadow. I didn't ask for this, I whispered to her image. I didn't ask for your life, but as I looked around at the beautiful apartment that was now mine, the apartment I could never have afforded on my own, a small, treacherous part of me wondered if maybe, just maybe, I could become more than just Emma the disappointment. Maybe in the vacuum Olivia left behind, I could finally find space to grow. I just hadn't expected to share that space with the man she'd left behind. The guest room was a pristine tomb of unlived potential. No personal touches, just elegant, untouched furnishings that looked like they belonged in a luxury hotel. I unpacked my meager belongings, thrift store clothes, and dog-eared books that looked jarringly out of place against Olivia's tasteful liquor. For 3 days, James and I orbited each other like wary planets, establishing silent boundaries. He took his coffee at 6, so I waited until 7. I cooked dinner at 8, leaving a portion in the refrigerator that would disappear by morning. We communicated through notes and text messages, two people haunting the same space, both afraid of the ghost between us. On the 4th night, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. I found James in the kitchen, surrounded by shattered crystal, a bottle of whiskey open on the counter. It was her favorite, he said, not looking up, his voice thick, wedding gift from her boss. I grabbed a broom, carefully sweeping around his bare feet. Should I be worried about you? James ran a hand through his disheveled hair. But I swept the broken glass into a dustpan, hyper-aware of his eyes on me. You look just like her, you know, but you move differently. I know, I'd heard it my entire life. Olivia was Grace. I was Function. She floated. I trudged. We were different people, were you? He seemed genuinely curious, not accusatory. What happened between you two? I emptied the dustpan into the trash. Nothing happened. Life happened. She went up. I went sideways. She never talked about you, James said, then winced, sorely. That was cruel. It's fine. It's true. I leaned against the counter. I need to go through her things. I've been putting it off. I can help, he offered, surprising me. Not with women's things. But the next morning we began the archaeological dig of Olivia's life. The closet was first a cavernous space, filled with designer clothes that would never fit my budget, even if they perfectly fit my body. James watched from the doorway as I ran my fingers over the fabrics, the unfamiliar textures of luxury. Take whatever you want, he said quietly. She would want you to have them, I wasn't so sure. The Olivia I knew guarded her possessions jealously, but the gesture moved me. I'll set aside anything that means something to you, I promised. While sorting through her vanity, I found a journal hidden beneath false-bottomed drawer, sleek black letter with a tiny ornate lock. I glanced at James, who was busy boxing up books, and slipped it into my pocket. Chabo, I knew this wasn't meant for him to see that night. Curled in the guest bed, I picked the simple lock and opened the journal to the most recent entry, dated just days before her death. E called again, begging for money as usual. Said no this time, James. Suspects nothing. I froze, my heart pounding. Me, I hadn't called Olivia for money, not recently. I'd stopped asking for help months ago, determined to stand on my own 2 feet. I flipped back, scanning entries. E showed up at the office today. Pathetic, had security escort her out. I had never been to Olivia's office, never told Jay that E is struggling with addiction again. Necessary lie to keep them apart. Addiction, I'd never had addiction issues. A knot formed in my stomach as I read page after page of lies about me, stories of unpaid loans, erratic behavior, jealous outbursts. A fictional version of Emma that Olivia had created for her husband, her friends maybe, even her co-workers. But why deeper in the journal I found financial records, large withdrawals, questionable transfers, accounts I'd never heard of. Olivia Meticulous, perfect Olivia, had been hiding money problems behind a facade of success. Ben Spire clothes bought on credit cards, stretched to their limits loans tones from people whose names I didn't recognize. The last page held a cryptic note. If M follows through, everything changes, worth any cost. I closed the journal, my hands shaking. The sister I thought I knew, the golden twin, the successful one, had been living a house of cards, and for some reason she'd made me the villain of her story. In the living room, I heard James moving around, the clink of another glass being filled. I slid the journal under my mattress and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, I would need to go to Olivia's office, where her position was supposedly being held for me temporarily, a compassionate arrangement according to the company's HR department. I needed to understand what else my sister had been hiding, because the Olivia in these pages wasn't just a stranger to me. She was becoming something far worse, a mystery. You must be Emma. The receptionist at Caldwell Happens beamed at me, her expression too bright, too sympathetic. I am so sorry about Olivia, we all miss her terribly. I forced a smile, uncomfortably aware of the stares following me across the lobby. I was wearing Olivia's clothes, a sleek black pencil skirt and cream blouse I'd found in her closet. Tag still attached. The outfit cost more than my monthly grocery budget, but I needed to look the part. Emma, the perpetual temp, wouldn't be taken seriously here, but Olivia's identical twin might. Thank you, I said. It's been difficult, of course, the receptionist. Kelly, according to her nameplate, nodded solemnly. Mr. Mercer is waiting for you, 15th floor. Michael Mercer, Olivia's boss and the company's creative director, greeted me with a firm handshake and searching eyes. The resemblance is remarkable, he said, not bothering with condolences. Though I understand you are quite different from Olivia in many ways. Something in his tone made me uneasy. Twins, not clones, I replied with a tight smile. Of course, he gestured to a chair. Let's discuss your temporary arrangement. The meeting was brief. I would oversee Olivia's accounts for 3 months while they searched for a permanent replacement. It was a courtesy, Mercer emphasized, not a job offer. They expected little from me, just to maintain client relationships and not, as he delicately put it, disrupt the excellent reputation Olivia built. The subtext was clear. Don't mess up your sister's legacy. Olivia's assistant, Zoe, showed me to my sister's office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a breathtaking view of the city. Life lined the walls along with framed campaign concepts and glowing client testimonials. She was brilliant, Zoe said, watching me take it all in. The best we had, so I've heard. I ran my fingers along the polished desk. I'll need access to her files, emails, current projects. Zoe hesitated. Mr. Mercer said to limit your access to essential materials, only ClinFace and documents, not internal communications. I am supposed to do her job without seeing how she did it. You are supposed to maintain, not create, Zoe corrected gently. Her passwords and account information are in this envelope. The rest. Well, privacy policies. After she left, I sat in Olivia's ergonomic chair, feeling like an imposter in my sister's skin. The envelope contained neatly typed passwords, contact lists, and meeting schedules. I logged into her computer expecting more resistance, but the system welcomed me as O. Bennett without question. I spent the morning familiarizing myself with her accounts, major brands, impressive budgets, campaigns that had won industry awards. My sister hadn't just been successful, she'd been exceptional. While searching for a client brief, I stumbled across a folder labeled Sponson Projects. Berkshire overrode professionalism, and I clicked inside were dozens of marketing concepts, brilliant, innovative ideas unlike anything in the official campaigns. They felt familiar somehow, the thinking behind them resonating with me on a deeper level. Then I saw it, a presentation titled Revitalizing Decrinks for Digital Markets. My breath caught. It was my work. The proposal I developed for a small artisan collective last year, the one that had been rejected because a major agency had presented something similar. Now I knew which agency, my concepts, my research, my visual language, all repackaged under Olivia's name, winning her an industry award I hadn't even known existed. Hands shaking, I dug deeper. There were more ideas I'd shared with Olivia over coffee, concepts I developed for freelance projects, even campaigns I'd pitched to companies that had rejected me only to implement suspiciously similar work months later. For years I'd believed I wasn't good enough while Olivia soared. Now I understood she'd been climbing on my ideas, stealing my work while painting me as unreliable and unsuccessful to anyone who might discover the truth. Finding everything okay, I jumped quickly, closing the folder. Michael Mercer stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Yes, just getting oriented, I said, heart pounding. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Olivia was very special to this company. To me, personally, something in his tone made my skin crawl. I understand. Do you? He moved closer. She spoke of you often, you know, her troubled twin, so much potential, but so unstable. The words from Olivia's journal echoed in my head. If M follows through, everything changes. And Michael, I am not my sister, I said carefully, clearly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Olivia understood how things work here. The give and take. I hope you are similarly adaptable during your time with us. After he left, I sat frozen, the implications of his words settling like ice in my veins. What exactly had been the relationship between my sister and her boss? And what did he expect from me now? On my way out that evening, Zoe caught up with me at the elevator. Hi, I just wanted to say not everyone here believed what Olivia said about you. I stared at her, speechless. Some of us saw the pattern, she continued, her voice low. How she'd disappear after meeting you for coffee, then return with brilliant new concepts. How her work changed whenever you had a new portfolio piece online. She pressed a flash drive into my hand. This might help you understand. Just be careful who you trust here. The elevator doors opened. Why are you helping me? I asked. Zoe's expression hardened. Because Olivia wasn't the person everyone thought she was. And her accident? I'm not convinced it was an accident at all. You look different, James said when I returned to the apartment that evening. He was cooking, actually cooking, not just microwaving something. The scent of garlic and onions filling the space. I set down my bag, Olivia's bag, a leather tote that cost more than my last month's rent. Good different or bad different, he considered this. Wooden spoon paused mid-stir. Just different, less, like you are wearing a costume. His eyes lingered on my face where I'd removed most of Olivia's heavier makeup, opting for my own simpler style. Hungry. We ate together for the first time since I'd moved in, the silence less strained than before. I wanted to ask about Michael Mercer, about Olivia's relationship with her boss, but something held me back. Instead, I told him about the office, the clients, the way people stared at me in the hallways. They did that with her too, James said, surprising me. Olivia commanded attention. You invite it differently. What does that mean? He struggled to find the words. Olivia walked into a room expecting everyone to look at her. You seem surprised when they do. It was the most instant-tight thing anyone had ever said about the difference between us. Later, alone in my room, I plugged in Zoe's flash drive. It contained copies of emails, calendar entries, and voice memos from Olivia's private accounts, things I shouldn't have had access to. I scrolled through them, my unease growing with each revelation. They were emails between Olivia and Michael that crossed every professional boundary, veiled references to our arrangement, And what you promised, colony entries marked only with or private meeting that aligned with large deposits to her personal account, and most disturbingly a folder of information about me, my job applications, my portfolio, my resume, all meticulously tracked. One voice memo dated just weeks before her death made my blood run cold. Emma's getting too close to the Hartwell account. Need to make sure they don't connect her work to mine. Moing says he'll handle it, but I can't risk exposure now. Too much at stake. If she knew what I've done with her ideas. No, I've come too far to be dragged down by my shadow now, my shadow. That's all I'd been to her, a darker, lesser version of herself, a resource to be mined, then discarded. I didn't realize I was crying until James knocked on my door asking if I was okay. I wiped my tears, hastily closing the files. Fine, I called just memories, but they weren't my memories. They were revelations about a woman I'd thought I knew, my twin, my other half, who had been systematically sabotaging my career while stealing my ideas. The next morning I arrived at Olivia's office, my office now with new purpose. If I was going to understand what happened to my sister, I needed to become her at least on the surface. I dressed in her clothes, styled my hair like hers, and walked with the confidence she'd always projected. The transformation was remarkable. People responded differently, with respect, not sympathy. I took control of meetings my sister had scheduled, presented her ideas, my ideas with authority, and began carefully investigating the Hartwell account she'd mentioned. Hartwell Artisans was a collective of traditional craft people looking to expand their market. Their file was suspiciously thin, but with some digging I discovered they'd approached me first, not Caldwell Heppind. Olivia had intercepted their interest and redirected them to her agency. To her, that's quite a breakthrough you've made on Hartwell, Michael said, appearing in my doorway after a particularly successful client call. Olivia struggled with that account because it wasn't her work to begin with. I thought bitterly I had a fresh perspective, I said carefully. He studied me, something predatory in his gaze. You know, you are not what I expected, Emma. You are actually quite capable. Thank you. We should discuss your future here. Perhaps over dinner. The invitation hung between us, loaded with implications. I thought of the emails, the calendar entries, the arrangement he'd had with my sister. I'd like that, I said, surprising myself. I have questions about Olivia's work. His smile tightened slightly. Tomorrow night, then I'll have my assistant set it up. That evening, I found James waiting for me, 2 glasses of wine already poured. How was it today being her? He asked. The question caught me off guard. I'm not being her. Aren't you? His tone wasn't accusatory, just curious. The clothes, the job, the apartment. You are filling the space she left. I took a large sip of wine. I am discovering there was a lot I didn't know about my sister. James nodded slowly. Me too. He hesitated, then added, she was having an affair with Mercer. The confirmation should have shocked me, but after what I'd found, it merely completed the picture. How long have you known? 6 months, wound text on her phone. He stared into his wine. I confronted her. She denied it, of course, but then started staying late at the office more often, coming home with expensive gifts she claimed her bonuses for her exceptional work. Why did you stay? I asked. His eyes met mine, vulnerable and honest for the first time since I'd arrived, because I still loved her, or the person I thought she was. He shook his head. Pathetic, right? No, I said softly, not pathetic. We sat in companionable silence, 2 people piecing together fragments of a woman who had deceived us both. For the first time, I felt a connection with James that had nothing to do with Olivia, a shared sense of betrayal, of reevaluating everything we thought we knew. I have dinner with Mercer tomorrow, I said finally. He wanted to discuss my future at the company. James's expression darkened. Be careful. That man to hear is something not right about him. I nodded, thinking of Zoe's warning about Olivia's accident not being accidental at all, I know. But I need answers. He reached across the table, briefly touching my hand, the first voluntary contact since I'd moved in. Just promise me you'll be careful. I've already lost one Bennett woman. I don't want to lose another. The warmth in his voice, the genuine concern, it awakened something in me I hadn't expected. Not attraction exactly, but connection. For the first time, I saw James as more than just Olivia's husband or my reluctant roommate. I saw him as someone who might actually see me, Emma, not just Olivia's copy. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Michael Mercer chose a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign, just a discreet door attended by a suited host who recognized him immediately. Inside was all muted luxury, soft lighting, plush seating, the kind of hushed atmosphere that spoke of money and power. You look lovely tonight, Mercer, said, his eyes tracking the neckline of the dress I'd chosen from Olivia's closet. That was one of my favorites on her. The proprietary tone made me uneasy, but I smiled through it. Thank you for inviting me. I've been wanting to discuss Olivia's work. Ah, still so focused on business? He signaled the waiter for wine. Your sister understood the value of pleasure before business. I maintained my composure as he ordered for both of us, without consulting me, and spent the next 20 minutes dropping names of powerful clients and industry figures. I nodded at appropriate intervals, playing the role of impressed employee while watching him for any slick. Any revelation, you know, he said after his second glass of wine. Olivia was exceptional at recognizing valuable ideas. She could spot potential where others saw nothing worth developing. Is that what she did with my work? The words escaped before I could stop them. His smile froze. I don't know what you mean. I found my proposals in her files, Michael, my concepts, my research repackaged under her name. He set down his glass carefully. Creative inspiration is a complex thing, Emma. Ideas flow both ways between talented people. Olivia may have been influenced by your work just as you were by hers, except she won awards and promotions for my influence, while I couldn't get interviews. His expression hardened. Rut. Emma, jealousy is an ugly quality, especially directed at someone who can't defend herself. Was that your arrangement? She gave you my ideas, you gave her promotions, and together you built your reputations on my work? I leaned forward. What else did she give you, Michael? I think this dinner was a mistake. He signaled for the check. Olivia warned me about your instability, your paranoia. I was willing to give you a chance, out of respect for her memory. But clearly what happened the night she died, I interrupted. His face went blank too controlled. I don't know what you mean you canceled meetings with her that day, urgent ones according to her calendar. Why, client emergencies. Nothing unusual in the argument you had that morning. The one your assistant overheard. I was bluffing, but his reaction told me I'd hit something real. His knuckles whitened around his glass. You should be careful with accusations. Emma, grief can make people imagine things that simply aren't there. His voice was soft, but laced with threat. Olivia's death was a tragic accident. The police report is very clear on that, is it? Because I've been wondering how my perfectly coordinated sister managed to fall down a flight of stairs she used every day. In heels she could practically run in. The waiter approached with the check. Mercer signed it without looking, his eyes never leaving mine. Don't make the same mistake your sister did, he said quietly. Olivia forgot who built her career, who could destroy it just as easily. He stood adjusting his cuffs. I've been generous with you out of respect for her memory. That generosity has limits. I watched him leave, my heart pounding. The threat was unmistakable, but it wasn't fear I felt. It wasn't fear I felt. It was certainty. My sister's death hadn't been an accident, and Michael Mercer knew exactly what had happened. When I returned to the apartment, I found James sitting in the dark, illuminated only by the glow of his laptop screen. "You are back early," he said, looking up. "How was dinner with the snake and lightning?" I kicked off Olivia's uncomfortable heels and collapsed beside him on the couch. "Did you know Olivia was planning to leave you?" The question was cruel, but I needed to know how much he understood. To my surprise, he nodded. "For Mercer?" he asked. "I think so. There are emails, plans. She was going to ask for a divorce." James closed his laptop. I knew she was unhappy. "That's why I has stopped abruptly. That's why you." "What?" He ran a hand through his hair, conflict evident on his face. "I hired someone to follow her, a private investigator. I thought if I had proof of the affair I could confront her, maybe save our marriage." "What did they find more than I wanted to know?" He retrieved a folder from a drawer and handed it to me. "The affair with Mercer, financial irregularities, and something else. She was being blackmailed." The folder contained surveillance photos, financial records, and transcripts of conversations between Olivia and an anonymous contact demanding payment to keep quiet about intellectual property theft. "Someone knew she was stealing my work," I whispered. "Not just yours. She'd been doing it for years to multiple people, building her career on other people's ideas." His eyes met mine, pained but honest. "The investigator delivered this report the day before she died. I confronted her that morning. My heart stopped. The morning of her accident, we fought badly. She denied everything, called me paranoid, said I was imagining things." His voice cracked. "She left for work furious. That was the last time I saw her alive." The implication hung between us, unspoken but deafening. "James, did you?" "No," he said firmly. "I didn't kill her, Emma, but I've been terrified that our fight somehow led to her accident, that I drove her to be careless, distracted. I believed him perhaps because I needed to, or perhaps because the pain in his eyes was too raw to be fabricated. I think Mercer was involved," I said quietly. "Here is something he's hiding about that day." James nodded slowly. "The police never interviewed him, just took his statement that he hadn't seen her that afternoon. We need to find out what really happened." I gripped the folder for both our sakes as I stood to leave. James caught my wrist. "Emma, here is something else you should know." He hesitated, then continued. "The blackmailer." The investigator traced the account. It was Olivia herself, setting up a fake blackmail scheme to embezzle money from the company. I stared at him, trying to process this final betrayal. Why would she do that? Because she was planning to leave not just me, but Mercer too. She needed an exit strategy, money to disappear. He released my wrist gently. "Your sister wasn't just a thief, Emma. She was a con artist who got caught in her own web." Back in my room, I pulled out Olivia's journal, rereading the last entry. "If Monsieur follows through, everything changes, worth any cost." I had assumed Mercer's Mercer, but what if it was money? If Olivia's fake blackmail scheme had succeeded, she would have had the resources to vanish, leaving both James and Mercer behind. My twin, the perfect sister, had been living a complete lie, stealing ideas, manufacturing relationships, manipulating everyone around her, and in the process, she destroyed my career, poisoned people against me, and ultimately lost her own life. The realization should have devastated me. Instead, I felt a strange, unsettling freedom. If Olivia could remake herself from nothing, become someone else entirely, why couldn't I? The next morning, I didn't dress like Olivia. I wore my own clothes, the simple, affordable pieces that had always felt like me, but I styled my hair the way she would have applied her signature red lipstick and walked into Caldwell Heppians with my head high and shoulders back. Not Olivia, not Emma, someone new, someone stronger. Zoe noticed the change immediately. "Bold choice," she said, eyeing my outfit. "You are not trying to be her anymore." "I never was," I replied. "I was just trying to understand her." Michael Mercer was conspicuously absent, his assistant informing me he'd taken a sudden trip to meet international clients. Running away, I thought, or regrouping after our confrontation. I spent the morning combing through Olivia's emails looking for anything connected to her accident. Renzi noon, Zoe knocked on my door, expression tense. "You need to see this," she said, closing the door behind her. She pulled up an email chain on her phone, messages between Olivia and Mercer from the day of her death. "We need to talk. This has gone too far. -O, nothing to discuss. You agreed to the terms. -M, not these terms. I never agreed to fraud. I am going to the board. -O, don't threaten me, Olivia. You are in this as deep as I am. Nobody would believe you anyway. Nobody would believe you anyway. I have proof, all of it. -O, then you leave me no choice?" -M, the last message had been sent just an hour before Olivia's accident. "Where did you get these?" I asked. "I manage his calendar. Remember, I have access to his accounts." Zoe looked nervous. "I'd been trying to find evidence since it happened." "He was there that day, Emma? In the stairwell? I saw him leaving right before I found her." My blood ran cold. "Have you gone to the police?" She shook her head. "With what?" "Emails that could be about anything. My word against his. He'd deny it, then I'd lose my job. Maybe worse." She was right. We needed more than suspicion. We needed proof. That evening, I showed James the emails. He paced the living room, connecting pieces of the puzzle aloud. Mercer and Olivia were embezzling from clients, he theorized. She wanted out. Threatened to expose him, so he silenced her. But why was she embezzling in the first place, I wondered. With her salary, bonuses, the award she was winning with my work. She had everything. Not everything, James said quietly. She wanted freedom. From me, from Mercer, from the whole life she'd built on lies. The money was her escape plan. We stayed up late, piecing together a timeline from emails, calendar entries, and bank records. Olivia had been planning her disappearance for months, accumulating cash, researching remote locations, creating a new identity, but something had gone wrong. The fake blackmail, I realized suddenly. Mercer must have discovered it wasn't real, that she was setting him up to take the fall while she was setting him up to take the fall while she escaped with the money. And when she threatened to expose their entire scheme unless he let her go, he decided to silence her permanently. "We need to get into his office," I said. "Find the proof Olivia claimed to have. That's breaking and entering, Emma. You have a better idea." He didn't. The next day was Friday, the day Mercer traditionally left early for his standing golf game. With Zoe's help, James and I accessed the executive floor after hours. She disabled the security cameras for 8 crucial minutes, enough time to enter Mercer's office and search for anything Olivia might have hidden. "What exactly are we looking for?" James whispered as we rifled through Mercer's meticulously organized desk. "Anything unusual?" Olivia was clever. She would have hidden evidence where only Mercer could find it, something that would implicate him if anything happened to her. We found nothing in the obvious places: drawers, filing cabinets, computer.